Okay, today we're going to start on Lamed Ches Lamed Beis by Hechidami Mecha. It's 3 lines from the bottom. Thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day.
On the base.
Let's start somewhere else. Wherever you have the reference. Okay, we thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. The source of our learning, we should have the Beis Hamikdash immediately. And we're learning Lili Nishmas, Zahav the Basra Daf, and Sanos ben Betzin, and also Rav David ben Sarah, and Gedalia Getzel Elias ben Feged Separa.
38. No, you said
38.
38.
Lamed Ches. Lamed Ches. Lamed Beis. Yeah, right there, right by this thing. Okay. We were talking about Chazaka. It takes 3 years. Person purchases a property, and he doesn't have a document that shows that he purchases it. So if he was in the property 3 years, he can just claim that I bought it. And they said, "Where's your document?" He said, "Well, no one said anything for 3 years. That's considered Chazaka, and we assume that it's his." Now, we were talking about if the actual owner is somewhere else, the original owner is somewhere else, and he makes a macha, he protests. He says, "It's not. There's a person in my property. It's not really his. It belongs to me." So, how does that macha work? So, hechidami macha. Now, the Rashbam says we're talking about macha shalei b'fanav. Talking about when the person is in a different location. The original owner is not right here. He's not going and knocking on the door saying, "Can you please get out of my house?" He's in a different country. Problem is that he needs to protest against someone that's in his property back at home. So what does he say? Rav Zvid says, Plani Gaslanu Layavim Macha. Rav Zvid says that if all he says is that so-and-so is a thief, it's not considered a good macha. Shbam explains why is it not good macha? Because he didn't say why is it thief. Maybe you just don't like the guy. He doesn't know that he has to watch his document. He didn't say he's a thief because of this property. It's a thief. So maybe it's just like slander. It's not, but it doesn't mean that this property I have to hold on to the document. Rather, Planya Gazlanu Dinakat Leilari Begazlanusa Ulamacher Tavana Lebedina. In order to make a protest, what you really need to say is that so-and-so is a thief because he took my land. He stole my land. And tomorrow I'm going to take him to court. So there's some extra words in this. From the first statement, if he says so-and-so is a thief, we said it's not considered a macha. So you have to add on to that something. What do you have to add on? Say he's a thief because he took this land. And then he throws in another statement. He says, and I'm also going to take him to court. Now, how significant is that statement? So, the Rabbeinu Chananel says that if he doesn't say that last statement, and I'm going to take him to court, then it's just like slander, and it's not. It doesn't mean that the guy has to watch his document. However, the Rashbam himself says that no. Even if he doesn't finish that statement by saying, and tomorrow I'm going to take him to court, even if he doesn't say that, that's still considered a good protest, which it was logical based on the way we were explaining. I think so. He would have to accept that this is he's accepting the judgment. Right, but even Yidden have to sign that.
Here
Today.
it doesn't hold. First, it says that the threat doesn't, with or without the threat, would be okay. And then it has at the Rashbam says that tomorrow mentioned it because it's usually the protester would finish off the threat.
Okay. Okay.
Then it was
That fits with what we said. Amar, okay. Amar late tamerle. What happens? What happens if the person that's telling the witnesses says, "Don't tell him, but you should know that he's a thief. Took my property," and this is the guy that's protesting. The original owner is protesting. He says, "Don't tell the guy that's in the property. Tomorrow I'm going to take him to court. Don't tell him anything." So Rav Papa says, I'm sorry, I skipped. Rav Zvid says, "Hakama leitemele." That's not considered a protest. You told him not to say anything. You told him not to say. So the person doesn't know. He should keep his document. Rav Papa says, you said not to tell him. That doesn't mean you can't tell anyone else. If once you tell someone else, then someone else heard, and then that person has a friend, and his friend has a friend, and the person's going to hear it anyway. So according to Rav Papa, when you tell someone, don't tell it to so-and-so, you can assume that that person heard about it, not directly, but indirectly. And so therefore, that would still be considered a macha, even though you told him clearly, don't tell him. But the guy says, I didn't tell him.
works faster than.
Hill says that works faster. But you say, don't tell him. Right? Don't say anything. Let's say you want to spread a rumor. Don't say anything. Okay. Amrulay, we're not continuing the case that we said before when he said, don't say anything. This is a regular case where he protested in front of the witnesses or whatever that so-and-so is a thief, he's in his property. Amrulay, they came back and they said, Lay Amrina Lay. We didn't tell him anything. Now we know that the witnesses did not tell the guy that's in the property that he should be watching his document. They came back and they told us that. Well, Amar Rav Zid says, says, well, here they said that they didn't tell him. Now that was Rav Zid's logic, that if you tell him not to tell him, then we assume that it wasn't, that the news didn't reach him. And if they say they didn't tell him, even though he didn't tell him not to tell him, he just said, like, look, we were, it was our Lashon Hara month. We didn't talk to anyone for that month. So basically the guy didn't hear. That's Rav Zvid's logic. The guy didn't hear. So if the guy didn't hear, then the person needs to make another protest. Right? It's not satisfactory. And if he doesn't, then the person is going to end up with a chazaka because no one protested. Rav Papa says, when they came back and they said, by the way, we didn't tell him, that's only we didn't tell him. But lachrini, but to other people, amrilo, they did say, chavra friend has a friend, and your friend's friend also has a friend. So basically, according to Rav Papa, even though they said we didn't tell him, he doesn't have to make another protest. It's satisfactory what he did. We say that the person heard about it. Amar lahu, if he says to them, leitepak lechushusa. How do they translate the word shusa? Shusa usually means a wall. It should not go out even a drop. Don't tell anyone. Leave your mouth. So yeah, I don't know why shusa must mean like your lips or your teeth, like the wall, like the. I think shusa means a wall. But anyway, it says don't utter a sound. Don't let anyone hear about this. Then that's a different story. So Amar Rav Zvid, Hakama leitebek lechushusa. Rav Zvid says, he said not to tell anyone, then he didn't tell anyone. It's not considered a macha. He said that guy is in his property because he stole the property, but don't tell anyone. He says, don't tell anyone, then the person doesn't know that he needs to watch the document. Now, I would have liked that the Gemara would have said that Rav Papa agrees to that. It doesn't. It just says that Rav Zvid says that. But because it doesn't say that Rav Papa argues, it means that Rav Papa is agreeing to this. This would be L'Kuli Alma. Why did Rav Papa say before that if you say not to tell him, that it's still considered a macha and it's considered the person would have a chazaka? No, I'm sorry. It's considered macha and the person won't have a chazaka. That's because he didn't tell him, but he told other people, and the word is going to get around. But over here, where he says, don't tell anyone, how does the word get around? Rav Papa would agree to this. Yeah. It says it in the name of Rav Zvid, but Rav Papa would agree. We don't say Rav Papa's arguing. Amrulei lei mafkinan shusa. Let's say it was the other way. Let's say he didn't tell them anything. To say, not to say. He just made a macha. He said, you should know so-and-so is a thief. And they come back and they say, we didn't tell him. We didn't say anything. No, we didn't tell him. We didn't say anything to anyone. Your secret is with us. So, Amar of Papa, here a Papa would be Maida, a Papa would agree, because he didn't tell anyone that it's not considered a macha. He would have to go make another macha. Yeah.
How would you normally know what someone who heard you was going to say, or if they're going to say?
Yeah. Let's go a drop further, and then I'll show you the Rashbam. Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua, Amar Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua says, "Kol milsa delei ramila deinish, Amar la lavadaita." If you didn't tell a person clearly not to say something, then he probably said it, and he doesn't even realize. Kol milsa delei ramila deinish, Amar la lavadaita. If you didn't tell him this is a secret and no one is allowed to know, if you didn't say that and he comes back and he says, I didn't tell anyone, he probably told someone. He didn't realize that he said it. So over here, in this case, they come back and they say, we didn't tell anyone. We didn't leave our lips. So they probably did say it. They just didn't realize it. Rav Papa, who was the one that was really strict about this, and he said that the word's going to get around. Over here was Maida, that the word did not get around. And Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua, Rav Papa's friend, he says that, no, the word got around anyway, even though they said they didn't say anything. It probably slipped somewhere. Yeah. Now, the Rashbam says the halacha. Interesting. Rashi usually doesn't tell us the halacha except in like two places, except in Chulin when he talks about the loss of kashas. He says about in the loss of Shabbos, sometimes Rashi says v'hilchasa. The Rashbam sometimes gives us the halacha, and more here, the Rashbam says, if you see in the Rashbam v'hilchasa, I'm sorry, I don't know, in my Rashbam, I have the wide lines. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines down. It's in the Rashbam, Amar Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua. It says v'hilchasa. Whether the person that's protesting says, don't say anything. Don't say anything to him. Don't say anything from these words. Whether they said, we did not say anything, it's always going to be considered a macha. Even though he says, don't tell him, or they said we didn't tell anyone, it's still a macha. The only one where it's not going to be a macha is when the one that was protesting said, don't let the words escape your lips ever. That's the only one that's not a macha. It says that the Rabbeinu Hanan passes like this also. So the only one was the one that Rav Papa agreed to. What is it? What is macha? Macha is the protest. It's not considered a protest. In the one case where he said, "Don't let this protest leave your lips. Don't let anyone hear about it." Okay. Actually, it wasn't Rav Papa that said it. It was Rav Zvid that said, that was the one that. But we said that Rav Papa agreed to that. Okay. Next Gemara. Amar Rava, Amar Rab Nachman. Rava says in the name of Rab Nachman, if they make a macha, if the original owner of the property makes a protest, the macha says that the guy that's living in my property is a thief. It's not really his property. Tomorrow I'm going to take him to court. And he says that not in front of the person, not in front of the guy that's there. He says it to other witnesses. That's acceptable. It's acceptable as a macha. And the person that's there does not get a chazaka. Why? How does a chazaka work? Where we tell the owner, why didn't you say anything? Well, he did. He said it.
So even if he was living there
Somewhere else,
for 3
and the
years,
guy was there 3 years, but because the person protested,
he doesn't
so
have
it
that
doesn't.
3 years.
It cancels the 3 years.
So if someone's protesting, it automatically puts possession of that property in question.
Just one person.
But he has to bring witnesses.
No.
Guy brings witnesses.
What do you mean, just one person?
He just protest to one person. That's enough.
Oh, how many people need to be there? That you'll see in a moment. You'll see that soon. Eisvei Rabba Rav Nachman. This was a statement from Rav Nachman that Rabba said over. Now, that the person doesn't need to be in front of the protester. He can protest not in front of the occupant. So Rabba asks a question to Rav Nachman. Amar Rav Yehuda. It says 1 second. We learned in our Mishnah that Rav Yehuda, he argued on the Tanakama. He argued on the whole pshat of how chazaka works. He says that you say that chazaka works because after 3 years, you don't have to hold on to your document. Because you didn't say anything, so I didn't realize that I needed to hold the document. So the 3 years sort of takes away the claim of show me your document. That's there's a claim, if you really bought it, show me the document. 3 years went by, you say, you can't ask me to hold the document so long. It's already 3 years and no one said anything. So it uproots that claim. Rav Yehuda didn't say that. Rav Yehuda said that really a chazaka should work immediately. Because if the person is right there, you would never allow someone to walk inside your house and just start living there. You'd say, get out of my house. The fact that you don't say that immediately means that there's a chazaka. So why they say chazaka takes 3 years? Because it's possible that a person went to a faraway country. How far would a person travel 1 year's worth of journey? People don't travel more than a year's journey. And so when the word gets to him that someone is occupying his house, it already takes a year for him for the word to get him. And then he has to travel back, right? Then he has to travel back. So that takes another year because it's a year away. So that's going to be a total of 3 years by the time he gets back. So he gave 3 years for the chazakas that he should test. So the problem is, Rav asked to Rav Nachman, if you don't need to be in front of the person to make the protest, then why does Rav Yehuda say, I'm Rav Yehuda, le'amar shal shanim al kadeshia baspamya? Why did they say it takes 3 years? Because could be the person is Aspamya, maybe Spain, I don't know where Aspamya is. The Yachzik Shana, he's going to take he's going to make a chazaka for a year. The Yelchu, and they're going to go and tell him, V'yadiu Shana takes a year for him the word to get him. The Yabesh l'Shana Cheres, and then by the time he comes back, it's going to be a year. So it takes 3 years. Let me finish the question. And if, according to you, Rav Nachman, you hold that you don't need to be in front of the person to make the machal, why does he have to come? Let him just stay there. Why does Rabbi Yehuda say that the person has to come back to make the machal? You don't have to come back to make the machal. You just protest in front of witnesses. Yes.
There's witnesses that's home the entire time. It's the whole 3 years thing can't even count.
There's witnesses that the occupant was there or that the original owner was there. Yeah, according to Rabbi Yehuda, I think that it should be a chazak immediately. Yeah. If the person, does that make sense? If the person, according to Rabbi Yehuda, if the person did not travel, then the chazaka should be immediately. That's what it seems from the Mishnah. Yeah. At least that from the Rashbam on the Mishnah. Yeah, the Rashbam says clearly. On the Mishnah, if you turn a page back, it says the last line of the Rashbam on the Mishnah. אבל אי המערער בעיר, חזקה מיד, כדמין לקמן בפרקה. It would immediately be a chazaka if the person is in town. The last respond on the Mishnah.
Earlier last week, the issue came up where he would take rent, like, part of the house to the person. Like inner rooms. And outer rooms, that would make everything a lot more complicated.
Right. Asking how does that work with Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Yehuda says that if the person would let him stay there, would Rabbi Yehuda hold of that Gemara? Maybe Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold of that Gemara. Maybe that was only according to the Rabbanan. Hill was bringing up that there was a Gemara before where the person said, "I was here the original owner says I was in the house the whole time. I was just using the other side of the house. So the reason why I didn't say anything to you was because I was there. You can't make a chazaka while I'm here."
Right.
So according to Rabbi Yehuda, but you would never let a person into your house at all, even if you're there. You wouldn't allow that. Maybe not. Maybe it would fit with Rabbi Yehuda. He says, "Yeah, you are my guest. I was here. You are my guest. No chazaka." Okay.
I have a question about the rabbi's attitude towards holding on to the piece of paper.
Yeah.
By comparison, in the times of the Gemara, was a woman required to hold on to her get?
I don't think so.
So was it the same thing after 3 years, or?
I think once the word was out that she was divorced, we wouldn't be concerned about where's the get.
It was the same idea.
Everyone knew that she was divorced.
They're very forgiving about people not holding on to a piece of
Right.
paper or parchment.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
It wouldn't be any issue whether she got paid or not. Paid for the.
Oh, yeah, she would hold on to the divorce, to the get. It depends. If there was the ksuba, then you're talking about the ksuba, not the get. The ksuba, she would hold on to the ksuba until she got paid. That's not the get. Yeah, the ksuba, and then, yeah, a document that someone owes you money, you would hold on to. Talking about a transaction that's finished.
Yeah.
Does she receive the get even without receiving the super?
Yeah.
Or only after?
No, she gets the get. So, yeah, and then she uses the get to say, "Give me the ksuba." Yeah, if there was no document of the ksuba, she has a ksuba. She has two things now. She has a get and a ksuba. She wants to get paid. So in places where they don't write a ksuba, then she can use the get to say, "You owe me the money from the ksuba, because look, you divorced me and now you didn't give me the money." And then he would have to hold on to a receipt that says that the ksuba was paid if there was no actual document of the ksuba. Yeah. But if there was a document, then they would just transfer it over and he would tear it up.
Today in Orthodox circles, do the rabbis require proof of a get before remarriage?
If you want to get remarried, you need to have proof of a get.
Yeah. So has it become more strict than it was back in the day?
Yeah, possibly.
Keeping
Possibly. You know what? Maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe until she's married, she would hold on to the get. Yeah, maybe
I'm trying to figure out the difference between these two and why.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to figure. I'm trying to compare the get
Yeah.
to the bill of sale and why they're
Yeah.
treated differently.
So the bill of sale is a transaction that took place and is finished. Now the property is yours.
Right.
So when you use that property, so how long do you need to hold on to it? It's already yours, and there's no one claiming anything. So there's really
Right.
there's no reason for you to hold on to that. So they said 3 years would be the amount of time. Yeah, by the get, when maybe, today when you try to sell the property, someone would say, "Well, show me that it's yours." They would want to see that sale thing. But back then that was enough. He said, no, I was here 3 years. I don't have the original documents. Good enough. Yeah.
Maybe it's more strict with the get now because keeping files and everything.
Could be.
On the best team.
It could be, but there was if the word was out that she was divorced, I'm not sure. It could be that would be enough back then.
It's also enough to prove someone's Jewish. Word of mouth.
Yeah. Okay. So Rav asked a question on Rav Yehuda. He said, why do you have to actually show up to make the, Rav asked a question according to Rav Yehuda, question on Rav Nachman. Why do you have to actually show up and protest? You could protest wherever you are, according to Rav Nachman, because the Gemara answers, Rav Yehuda is not saying that that's the need. He's just giving you advice. And his advice is, if you don't show up now, it's going to be very hard to claim the produce that the person already consumed. So you want to show up right away to be able to get your hands on the produce that your field produced. Otherwise, when you're going to try to claim it later, he's going to say, well, it didn't produce and this, and there's nothing left, and it wasn't a good crop. There's a bunch of things that you can say that's going to limit what you're going to be able to claim. So Rabbi Yehuda is not saying that you have to come back. Rabbi Yehuda is just giving you advice to come back, not because of the protest, but because you want to be able to claim the produce that was grown in the field that this guy's taking. Okay. Now the Gemara says, the fact that Rava was asking a question on Rav Nachman, it sounds like Rava disagrees with Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says, if someone protests not in front of the occupant, that's considered a valid protest. Rava must hold that it's not considered a valid protest. Must mean that he doesn't hold that it's considered a valid protest. But Rava said that it is a valid protest. Why is he asking a question on Rav Nachman when he himself holds the same thing as Rav Nachman?
Allowing someone to stay in his property. And there's an understanding that he's allowed to live there rent free. Could be like a relative or something. And he says, I want you out of here. He could say like, oh, like he's claiming that it's his.
Right. Right. Pretty scary. We had cases like that before in the Gemara, where someone was there because it was a collateral or it was a mortgage. He was living in there, and then afterwards he says that it's going to come up on the next page also. Theoretically, he could claim that it's mine, unless the person protests and says that the reason why you're in this property is because of just because of the mortgage. So the Gemara answers this question: why is Rava asking a question on Rav Nachman when Rava himself holds exactly the same thing as Rav Nachman? It says Basra Daf Rav Nachman Savra. After he heard from Rav Nachman, he then agreed to what Rav Nachman said. So yeah, the statement that we had before was after he heard this from Rav Nachman. Yeah, you got it? This conversation here where Rav asks Rav Nachman a question and Rav Nachman answers him, and then we had a statement back there where Rava says the same thing that Rav Nachman said. That statement back there was after this conversation. And that's why he held what Rav Nachman said. Ashkechinu Rab Yosi bar Rabbi Chanina leTalmidav to Rabbi Yochanan. Yeah, Rabbi Yosi bar Chanina is a Amira in Eretz Yisrael, the generation of Rabbi Yochanan's students. And Rabbi Yosi bar Chanina, he finds Rabbi Yochanan's students, and Amar Lahu, he says to them, Yom Rabbi Yochanan b'cham b'kama. Did Rabbi Yochanan ever mention how many people you have to make the protest in front of? Right? When someone with the original owner wants to protest that someone's in his property, he doesn't belong there. So how many people do you have to say it in front of? Well, the great student of Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Chia bar Abba says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, says Mechab b'fnei shnayim. He says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that a protest has to be in front of two people, two witnesses. Rabbi Vo, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Vo says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Mechab b'fnei shleisha, you have to say in front of three people. the basic difference between 2 and 3 is usually you have to say in front of witnesses, or do you have to say it in front of a bezdin? 3 people would be a bezdin, and 2 people would be witnesses. So the Gemara suggests over here, Lema b'derabba bar Rav Huna kamiflagi. Let us say that the discussion between Chia bar Abba, who was this great student of Rabbi Yochanan, every 30 days he reviewed everything that Rabbi Yochanan taught him, and Rabbi Yochanan corrected him if there was any mistakes. And Rabbi Vo was the Kisrin, right? It was in Cyprus, Kafrisen, I think. He no, in Caesarea. Rabbi Vo was in Caesarea. No, Caesarea. Is that how you pronounce it? Caesarea. So he said in name of Rabbi Yochanan that he need 3 because you would need to have a bezdin. So the Gemara says, "Lema b'derabba bar Rav Huna kamiflagi." Let's say that they're discussing a statement of Rabba, the son of Rav Huna. Dama Rabba bar Rav Huna. Rabba bar Rav Huna says, "Kol milsa de misamer ba'pei tlasa." This the Chavetz Chaim makes a huge discussion about this Gemara. Any statement that was said in front of 3 people, let's be mishum lishna bisha. There's no lashon hara anymore. Basically, are you allowed to talk about something that was in the newspaper? So, so and so did such and such a crime. That's in the newspaper, the headlines of the newspaper. Did you hear what so and so did? So, okay, now the more than 3 people know about it. Now it's not lashon hara anymore. You're allowed to talk about it. Anything, Rabbi bar Rav Huna says, anything that 3 people know about, it was said in front of 3 people, it's not lashon hara. Now the Chavetz Chaim limits this, that only if you're saying it not in a derogatory way, you can't say it to badmouth him. So you're allowed to talk about it, but it doesn't mean that you're allowed to talk negative to
Even if it's like on the news and
Yeah.
the whole world.
doesn't mean you're allowed to put him down, to say to harm him.
Oh, not to put down the person, but sometimes like,
Yeah.
not nice. Like just repeating what.
Anyway, there's no problem of lashon hara. So, huh? No, the news said it has to be true. Okay. Yeah, the Chavetz Chaim limits it. You have to see. Have you read the Chavetz Chaim? You read the book? It's worthwhile. Yeah, it's worthwhile. It's a lot of very important halachas. There's 2 books. One's called Shmir Salash, and one's called Chavetz Chaim. I don't know which one to start with.
Yeah, I've heard about the whole public.
Yeah. What the Chavetz Chaim did was, there's very few Gemaras that talk about lashon hara. We had something in Erechim, I think. We had there's this little piece of Gemara over here. There's a few places in Shas, and he built up a whole, this whole structure based on just these little pieces of information. So what it works.
I heard a lecture that said there's so little because it's not a halakha.
Oh, that's right, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what is it? Just midas tovos.
Yeah, he had an idea. Midas tovos, whatever. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and there is a pasuk. I mean, like say Rachel ba'amecha, that you're not allowed to say certain things. There is a pasuk there. It says also it's like spilling blood. Yeah, that's hard to get away with. That it's not a halacha, but it's okay. So mandam b'fnei shnayim. We had 2 opinions here. Remember, Chia bar Abba that says that when you make a protest, you have to say in front of 2 people, and you have Rabbi Vo that says you have to say in front of 3 people. So, what's the explanation for Rabbi bar Rav Huna's statement that anything that 3 people heard about is not considered lashon hara? Because once 3 people know about it, then it's going to be spread to everyone. Everyone knows about it. So, do we say that 3 people? do we say that Rabavo would hold of Rabba Bar Rav Huna, that you need 3 people for everyone to know about it? And Rab Chia Bar Abba argues with Rabba Bar Rav Huna. He says that 2 people it's enough. Maybe it's even less. So Mandam B'fnei Shnayim, less later Rabba Bar Rav Huna. But the one that says in front of 2 people, that's enough because he doesn't hold of Rabba Bar Rav Huna. This is Rab Chia Bar Abba. Mandam B'fnei Gimel, less later Rabba Bar Rav Huna. One that says that 3 people, it's because he holds of Rabba Bar Rav Huna. So the Gemara says like, it's not so. The Kuliyal Misli the Rabba Bar Rav Huna. Everyone actually holds of Rabba Bar Rav Huna. That 3 people is considered that everyone knows about it. However, so why does he say 2 people? The Machlekes over here is slightly different. One that says that you need 2 people, that's because he holds that you can't make a protest not in front of the occupant. The protest needs to be in front of the occupant. So then why do you need 2 people? I need 2 people to testify, to be witnesses that I made the protest. I'm not saying it in some other place, and I need everyone to hear about it, and I need to make sure that the occupant hears about it. No, I'm saying it directly to the occupant. And I need 2 witnesses to say, later on, he's going to say, I have a chazaka. And I'm going to say that, no, I was meicha. I need 2 witnesses to say that I was meicha, that I protested. So I need two witnesses to be there. However, Mandam B'fnei Gimel Kasav, the one that says, which is Rabavo, he says that you need 3 people there to hear the protest. That's because because you can protest not in front of the occupant, and then you have to make sure that everyone hears about it. That's why there's 2 different opinions here. The 2 different opinions, if it's 2 or 3, is based on the scenario. Is it directly in front of the person or is not in front of the person? If it's not in front of the person, then you need 3. Yeah.
If it's not in front of the person, you need 3. In both cases, when the person's there, you need 3 also.
So the one that says that you need 2 witnesses holds that if you protest not in front of the person, even if you have 3 people there, it's nothing anyway. So there's never a halacha that you need 3 because you can't protest not in front of the person. So when you protest in front of the person, you need 2 because you need 2 witnesses. The other one says that no, it's a valid protest not in front of the person, and therefore you need 3. When the different countries, you need 3. According to Rabavo, according to Rab Chia Bar Abba, you can't protest anyways in a different country. Yeah. Okay. Iba Yasema, if you want, you can learn this a little different. You could say the Kuliyam everyone holds that you're allowed to protest not in front of the person. Machlekes here is a little different. The one that says that you need 2 people, he holds Sadusabinan, you just need witnesses. He holds that you need more than witnesses, you need that everyone knows about it. Now, the difference over here would be, you see, we try to get out of this. The simple way of saying what the Gemara just said would be, do you hold of Rabba Bar Rav Huna or not? Do you say that 2 people will spread the word and everyone knows about it, or 3 people will spread the word and everyone knows about it? So what we're saying now is that really when it comes to Lashon Hara, to say that for sure everyone knows about it, that's really 3 people, everyone agrees to Rabba Bar Rav Huna. Why is there one opinion that says in front of 2 people that's enough? The explanation for that is that even though we're not sure that everyone knows about it, but it's enough to say it in front of 2 people, and that's considered like we can be satisfied with that. That would be good enough.
He's in a different country, though, it may not spread all the way back to his hometown. If he's in the same country
Right.
and he has to, that's good.
Yeah, the way the Rashbam puts it is that my only concern when it comes to a macha would be that if the person that's making the protest says, do not tell anyone, that would be my only concern. But if you don't say anything, then we can assume that it's going to get back to this person. Doesn't mean that everyone knows about it, not necessarily. But because when it comes to Lashon Hara, we don't consider that it's everyone knows about it. So it's only that this person would be assumed that he would know about it because he's in the property.
Would this have like an exception for the word to travel?
We're saying that this person, the guy that's in the property, would probably hear about it. Right, but that doesn't mean that it's that it's not lashon hara for to tell it to anyone. I consider that everyone knows about it. Right? It's not considered not lashon hara. It still may be lashon hara.
Then if it is lashon hara, how do we assume this can get back to the person? It's considered lashon hara, like we hope that that people are. Some people are not going to forward the message.
So we're assuming that it's lashon hara for everyone else, where people that it's not relevant for. The people that it is relevant for, we assume that it's going to be told over. Yeah. There's seven rules of Tayalas. You're familiar with that? It's in the Chavetz Chaim, but it's in the 7 rules of when you're allowed to say lashon hara. You have to. Yeah, it's a checklist. Have all the checklists. Yeah.
But when it comes to.
That goes under one rule. That goes under, that's the rule of Tayalas. But in that itself, the rules, those conditions are like, it has to be first-hand information. There can't be any exaggeration. There can't be any commentary on the fact. Right? All of those things.
When he's bringing a lawsuit, though.
Yeah.
Can't.
So a lawsuit would
Can't
be,
protest?
no, that would cover all of that.
That would be an exception.
Yeah, that would go under those.
Opposite.
Yeah, that's fine. The news is really problematic. The only heter would be that, well, everyone knows about it. But otherwise, I mean, the guys that are writing the news they're basically lashon hara monsters. They just, the reporters, they just go around like, what can we write about? Tough job. No? Question is it a Jewish job to be a reporter?
Exposure.
No? Okay.
Sometimes this stuff is a thread to me. So once they tell everybody about it, and then they go to court, and then he's sentenced, and like, you can take that back.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Chabad.org is not giving you news. It's telling you, today in Jewish history, they do give you news. No, they give you Torah. But there are other Jewish websites that give you news, which could be, they have to be very careful. Yeah, I'm sure. I hope they ask like Rabbanim, are we allowed to put this out and that out? Usually they're just saying so and so's engaged or something. Okay. Gidel bar min Yomi. It's all about selling shampoos anyway. Other stuff. Gidel bar min Yomi havale machliyasa l'mechuye. Gidel bar min Yomi had a macha that he was going to make. He had to make a macha. He had to make a protest. Someone was in his property. Ashkechino l'Rav Huna, l'Chia Barav, l'Rav Chilkia Bar Tuvi. Wow, we found all these great sages. Rav Huna, Chia Barav, and Chilkia Bar Tuvi. Davayasvi. They're sitting down. He says, "Perfect. You're just who I needed." Umacha Kamayo. He makes a protest in front of them. In front of 3 rabbis, he made the protest. Lashana, a year later, figures he has to make a protest again. He has to make a protest every year, or else it's going to the protest knocks it off for 3 years. So he doesn't want it to restart, to the chazaka. So he comes back a year later. Now, actually, it's not just, I'm explaining that he would have to protest only once in 3 years. It's actually worse than that. He's saying that he has to protest every year, according to this Gidel bar min Yomi. Now, the Rashbam says that if he protests only in the first year, but not in the second year and not in the third year, so it's very similar to us telling the original owner, why didn't you protest? Or very similar to the original owner telling the guy that had the chazaka, why weren't you there for 3 years? You were only there for 1 year and not for 2, the second year and the third year. That's a proof that you're not the real owner. So similar to that claim, we have the claim back on the protester. Why did you only protest the first year? Why didn't you protest the second year and the third year? It must mean that your whole protest isn't a real protest. If you'd be a real owner, you would have protested every year.
Oh, no.
So the Rashbam puts it, Igloi Milsa, you're revealing the fact that you didn't protest every year. The Shleikadin Micha Rishayna. And obviously the way you protested wasn't good. Your first 2 times, even the first 2 times, if you didn't protest the third time, and there would end up being a chazaka. because he didn't protest every year. It shows that you're not a real original owner, else you wouldn't have stopped.
So you have to
Well,
protest once within 3 years,
According
and
to him, he
every
has to protest
subsequent
every year. Every year he has to protest.
That's a completely different.
We learned that he has to make one protest.
Yeah, but what you can do is still make both opinions valid. Say he has to just protest once within 3 years and every subsequent year after that.
Oh, you'll
So
see.
two
You'll see in
and
a
one
second.
more.
You'll see in a second.
In his case, of the property trying to, or something, because why doesn't he kick him out?
Why doesn't he kick him out? That's what the protest is. Get out of the property. The guy's a squatter. He's in the property.
The thing that take care of that, like after the protesting, like Kisu and take the building and get him out.
Yeah, maybe he's there because it was a collateral thing or whatever, whatever. Okay. Amrulay, they told him, these great rabbis, they told to Gidl Bar Yomi, they said, late shrichas, it's not necessary to do that. You don't have to come every year to make a protest. Hachi Amar Rav says, Kivan Shemicha Shana Rishayna, once you make a protest the first year, Shavei Netzarech Limchetz, you don't have to make another protest. Yeah. Now, he didn't say anything that what happens after that. But what's assumed is Amar Reish Lakish Mishum Bar Kapara V'tzarech Limchet B'Seif Kol Gimel V'Gimel, that every 3 years you have to protest again. You have to renew your protest license, right? You have to put up the every 3 years. You have to send in for a renewal. Click every 3 years. Do you want to protest against anyone that's in your property? Okay. Toiba Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan has a question. What's going on over here? You protested the first time in the first 3 years, and you said that the guy's an absolute thief. He's in your property, he doesn't own it, and he's a goslin. Now, what's going to happen? 3 years later, you're going to say, okay, now he has a chazaka. He says a goslin has a chazaka. You told us already, he's a goslin. How does all of a sudden he have a chazaka? Now, the Rashbam adds a little point over here. That the person that you protested against should have held his document. What are we going to say? That you protested only the first 3 years, and you called him a goslin. Now, after that, he decided he can lose his document. So once you call him a goslin, he should be holding on to his document forever. Well, it's not so simple, because maybe let's take a look at the next Gemara. We'll see. There is one point which comes out from the next Gemara. Amar Rava says, I'm sorry. The Gemara says, Goslin sal kadaitach. Did you say he's really a goslin? You didn't say he's a goslin. You just said that he should watch his document or whatever. We don't know that he's really a goslin. We never took this to court. He's like a goslin. Okay, is suspicion. Amar Rava says, you have to make a mecha after every 3 years. Okay, that's the halacha according to what Rava says. That seems to be the halacha. Tani Bar Kapara taught, Irer chazar ve'irer. If he protests every 3 years, first 3 years he protested, he said that the guy's a goslin. I don't know what he's doing in my property. The next year he says, he's in my property because he owes me money, because I owe him money, and he's there, but it's not really his. He's just eating his mashkanta desura. He's there deducting from the loan. He's using up that to deduct from the loan. And then he comes back another time and he says some other reason. He says all of that, if he uses the same claim the whole time that he's a goslin, then in the chazaka, then that's a valid protest, and he doesn't have a chazaka b'mlav. But if he doesn't use the same claim, if every time he makes a different claim, what the guy's doing there, then yesh le chazaka, then the person has a chazaka. We say that He's a huchsak kafran. We see that the guy's a liar. We don't even trust his first claim. Everything that he says is not true, and all his protests are not true, and therefore the person would have a chazaka. Now, it's interesting because I still would have thought that maybe you should hold on to the document.
One of the commentary says that after the first claim, if he's like, if he's made aware of this thing, so he wouldn't hold the document. But maybe he lost it before the first claim.
Maybe once when you make a protest, I guess it only extends the amount of time that you have to hold the document. It extends it for 3 years. It pushes it off that you have to hold the document for another 3 years. That's why the person has to protest again 3 years later to tell you that you should need to hold on to the document. What's happening here is that because he protested 3 years ago and with one claim, and now he's making another claim 3 years later, the guy says, I don't have to hold my document. The guy's just a liar. I don't know. Huh? Yeah, he's just a crazy person. It's a liar, and then maybe he doesn't hold his document. Every 3 years, he's coming up with a different claim. But it's interesting. I don't know. I would have said that he would still have to hold his document.
It's just silly. But once he's made aware, like he would just take extra care.
Okay.
This forewarns the occupant to preserve peace.
Yeah. So why doesn't he have to do it after? Why does he have a chazaka without a document after 9 years or after 6 years? Why didn't he watch his document when the guy claims it?
Oh, do we get into that box? Because the basis for this 3 years, going back to the Mishnah, was the shar muad.
No, yeah.
And once a shar is a muad, it's a muad forever.
Yeah, that the Sharamur though we rejected. We said that only followed Rabbi Yishmael,
Uh-huh.
which ends up with you making a chazaka in under 3 years because it says it's really 3 years. According to the Rabbanan, the chazaka takes 3 years. We don't learn from Sharamur. We learn from that other thing about holding on to your document for 3 years.
Well, in that case, maybe what they're saying is after 3 years, someone's old news and people stop talking about it.
Uh-huh. That's interesting. Yeah, I don't see any commentary discussing. I guess the explanation is that you don't have to take the macha seriously when he starts changing his macha. That would be the explanation. I would have taken it serious. I would have watched my document if he would have said the same thing again. Now that he's changing his story, so you see it's nothing, and I didn't take care of it. I didn't take him serious. Okay. Amar Rav Nachman. Rava says in the name of Rav Nachman, okay, the logic of the following Gemara is very, very simple. You're allowed to do anything for someone else as long as to his betterment, not to his detriment. So if someone makes a macha, you protest. So-and-so is in my property and it's not his, it's my property. The witnesses that were there are allowed to write down that macha into a document. As a testimony, they're allowed to write it down. They can write the document, and the person didn't say to write it down, says, well, it doesn't hurt him, it's only to his betterment. Yeah, it's just a report, and it's to his betterment. He doesn't need to tell them to write it down. This is when someone is being forced to sell something, and he really doesn't want to sell it. So what he does is he tells the witnesses, says, I'm about to sign a contract that says that I'm selling something, but you should know that I'm really being forced into this and I don't want it. And so what I'm about to do is against my will. And he tells that to the witnesses, and the witnesses are then the witnesses can then write it down in a contract, in a document, and even though the person didn't tell them to write it down, he just said what's going on, but they're allowed to write it down. Why? Because it's only to his betterment. It's not to his detriment when they write it down. He wants to cancel the sale, and it's saying that the sale should be canceled. Okay. Let's say someone says that I admit that I owe someone money. He says it in front of two people. Reuven lends Shimon money. Shimon admits in front of two people that he owes Reuven money. Now, the two people want to write it in a document that Shimon had admitted to that. So that they're not allowed to do unless he says, he has to tell them to write it in a document. Now, the reason for that is that once that debt gets written into a document, then then Reuven's way of collecting changes. He can collect from property and things, and he can't claim that I paid it back. There's things that are going to change when there's a debt that's in a document versus a milval pet, when it's just a verbal agreement. So because there's going to be a change, and it's going to be to the detriment of the borrower, and the borrower is admitting, so until he tells them to write it into document, they can't just go ahead and write it. He says, I never told you to write it, and it's not considered, it's not valid. Kinyan bifnei shnayim. If you make an acquisition, that means like you take a sudar or something, you lift up a handkerchief, that because of that lifting that up, something is acquired to you. You don't have to write you don't have to tell them, the witnesses, that they are allowed to write the document. They could write the document just on their own. Kiyum shtaris b'shleisha. The way Kiyum shtaris works is that if someone has a document that he's afraid that the witnesses are going to disappear, they're going to travel, and he won't be able to get testimony on it. So he needs to make sure that this document is going to be valid without any questions. So what he does is, before the witnesses leave, he takes them to the court, and on the bottom of the document they're going to write, the court's going to write, it's called a hempik. It's like validating the document, it's being notarized. In the Rashbam, he says the language that they use, which is the language that they use till today. It says, three people sitting here as one. And this document came in front of us. All of this is written on the bottom of the document. I'm reading from the Rashbam, I'm not reading from the Gemara. When so and so and so and so came and they testified about their signatures, and we strengthened it and we established it as is appropriate. So, which means, and then they sign on it. Then the three judges will sign. So, Kim starts b'shleisha. When it comes to validating a document, you need to have three people signing, not like we said in all these other cases, mecha, maida, haida, and kinyan. All of those was only two people. When it comes to validating a document, you need three people. Otherwise, what you're just doing is you're just bringing more witnesses to validate these witnesses, and those witnesses aren't validated. So in order to get it really validated, it has to be done in court. Just three people, not two people. Okay. Siman mamhak. What does that stand for? Mecha, maida, haida, and kinyan. Maybe it's kiyam. No, it would only be mamhak, because kiyam needs three. All of these, those four need only two. What are you showing me? Yeah, in Kenyan, very good. Okay. Amar Rava, Rava says, Ikashali, if I have anything to ask about this statement from Rav Nachman that Rava is saying over, Akashali, my only question is the following. Hi Kenyan Hechidami. What type of Kenyan are we talking about over here when we're saying that it's done by two people, in front of two people, and you don't have to tell them that you acquired it? If this Kenyan is considered an act that's done by court, then you should need to have three people. And if it's not considered a Maisa Bezdin, then why don't you have to tell them to write it down? You see, let me read the note over here. Gemara suggests that a kinyan might be classified as a court proceeding, for in a sense, the act of witnessing a kinyan is analogous to adjudicating a court case. When judges adjudicate a case, they can award one litigant's property to another. Similarly, when people witness a kinyan, the resulting transaction transfers property from one person to another. If a kinyan is indeed classified as a court proceeding, this explains why witnesses can record it in a document without having been instructed to do so. When a court renders a decision, it is recorded without the authorization of the party it obligates. For a court can even confiscate property outright. It certainly does not need a litigant's consent to record its decision. If a kinyan is classified as a court proceeding, then it follows that they too may be recorded in a document without the principal's consent. However, the Gemara says that if it's not considered a court proceeding, then why does the principal not have to tell the witness, write a document that records the transfer, which is witnesses generally lack the authority to write a document without authorization from the principal, except to record a court proceeding. If a kinyan chalipin is not classified as a court proceeding, then okay. You're not explaining the other side very well. What the point that's missing is that if it's not a Maisa Bezdin, then the fact that there's a transfer taking place that is being written in the document, that's going to be to the detriment. That's the main point. It's going to be to the detriment of the person, and for that you would need to say clearly. So if the kinyan requires those witnesses there, and when it gets written down, so that's going to be that's when it you don't need it to get written down. The kinyan itself would transfer it. Okay, that's the Gemara's answer. The Gemara says like this. After he asked the question, then answered, it's not considered a Maisa Bezdin. Why don't you have to say, tell the witnesses to write it? Because that's what naturally happens. When you make a kinyan, it's only what you write down afterwards is just attesting to that. But the main idea here is, the Rashbam writes, the kinyan is already done. Once the handkerchief is lifted up, the fact that you're writing it down does not affect anything. It's just attesting to it. But really what took place already took place. It's not like by the loan, when you write it in the document, now there's a different type of loan here where it could be collected differently and you can't make certain claims on it. It's not here. The fact is, if the kinyan took place and it already took place, there's no difference if it's written down or not, other than it's attesting to what happened. But it doesn't change anything in it. The kinyan itself did everything. Okay. Rabba and Rabbi Yosef Damri Tarvayo. Rabba and Rabbi Yosef both said, "Lekasfin Maida Elaman Deletzayas Ladina." The only reason why we would ever write a document that says that this person is going into this transaction unwillingly is only if we're dealing with someone that would not listen to the court. Yeah. But if the person would listen to the court, then we say, okay, do the transaction, and afterwards go to court and work it out. We're only going to write it for someone that we know is not going to listen to the court. We need to have everything in writing beforehand. Otherwise, the guy's not going to listen. Rabbi and Rabbi argue on Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef. They argue on their teachers. They say, even for me and for you. Which means even for Rabbi and Rabbi, which of course they will listen to court. And nevertheless, if they're getting into a transaction with someone, they could write even a document that says that that person is getting in a transaction, is being forced into it, unwilling.
For example, across the board, doesn't matter the person.
Yeah, you'll see in a moment. Some interesting cases. Amri Nadai says, Kol Maida, every type of how do they translate Maida? Every type of what is it? The declaration Of what? Does it say a declaration of what? It's a declaration that's saying that he's getting into this by force. He's being compelled to make a transaction. Oh, coercion. Coercion. A declaration of coercion. The like Sibbenei Ananya Dinan Beiban said the Planya, Lav Medahi. It has to say, if any declaration, a document of declaration, it has to include in it that the witnesses actually know what the coercion is. Now, if he doesn't have that in there, then Lav Medahi, then it's not acceptable. Now, the explanation for this is that every time a person sells something, he's always coerced. Why do you sell it? Well, I needed the money. So it has to say that the reason why he's doing it is not because he's coerced. It has to say that they know the reason why, that they know what the coercion is. That the guy's telling them that if you don't do this, I'm going to take your thing and whatever, Okay. Meidah Demai. What are we talking about when you say that there's a declaration of coercion? Ida Gita Dematanta. If we're talking about a divorce document or a document about a gift. Then obviously he's being forced. They shouldn't have to say that they know what the coercion is, because look, it goes like this. That if the person doesn't want to give a get or he doesn't want to give a gift, so then just don't give it. Why would he ever give a gift or a get that he doesn't want to give? It must be that he's being forced. This is different when it comes to a sale. But if it comes to a sale, when it comes to a sale is different, because a person maybe wants to borrow money and he doesn't know how to borrow it. So what he does is makes this fictitious sale, and which means he sells an item and he gets the money, and then he says, "Oh, the sale is invalid," and he returns the money later. But that would only be by a sale. But when it comes to a get, if you don't want to give the get, don't give the get. If you don't want to give the gift, don't give the gift. It must mean the fact that you're making a meidah, a declaration. It must mean that there's something here that's compelling you, that you're being coerced into doing this. What we do today when we do a get, because of this problem, that's like it's possible that someone doesn't want to give a get to his wife, but the community is putting pressure on him. When he says, "If you want to come into the building, to the shul, you want to come to this shul, to that shul, you have to give your wife a get." And so the community puts pressure on him. So he goes to the Bezdin and he gives his wife a get. But before he gets to the Bezdin, tells the two witnesses outside that Harani Meiser Meidah, I'm making a declaration that everything that I'm about to do is invalid, it's against my will. Then he goes and he gives the get. And then he walks out, he says, "Ha ha ha ha. I'm not, you thought I gave a get, but really the get was nothing. She can't get remarried because I made the declaration that it's not good." So in order to avoid that, what we do is when he comes to give the get, we make him cancel any declarations that he may have made beforehand. So he does that. It says, what's the expression here? Yeah, it's called bittul maidais. Yeah, but there was I think we had an expression over here. What the person says when he's mevatel maidais. Okay. No. In the Rashbam, there was something where I thought it had the language of the bittul maidais. Oh, yeah, it's over here. Okay. So, but if it's going to be a sale, when we sit over here that you write a document for a meidah, what type of document? And when you write a document for the meidah, you have to say in the document that you know what type of coercion there is. The witnesses have to say that. How would that work? If it's considered, if it's by a get or a gift, then why would they have to write it? Of course, there's a coercion. And if it's by a sale, which that could be interesting because maybe he's coerced because he needs the money and he's just going to cancel the sale afterwards and give the money back, but like it's as if like a fake loan. It says over there, Rava says that we don't write coercion declaration documents for sales. The Gemara says, "Leilam desvini." Really, we are dealing with the sale. Rava agrees that we do write the document if there is a real coercion there. Now, there was a story with an orchard. There was a person that gave an orchard to, he gave as a mashkan, as a collateral, like a mortgage, to his friend. He owed him money. And he tells his friend, you can live in my orchard, you can take my orchard for such and such amount of years, for 3 years. After the person was there for 3 years to pay up the debt that he owed him, Amar, he tells the original owner like this: I want to buy the orchard. If you sell it to me, then good. And if you don't sell it to me, I'm going to hide the document that says that it was here as a mortgage. And I'll say that I bought it. I was here 3 years already, and I have a chazaka. I'm just going to lie, and I'm going to say that it's mine. So therefore, he's forcing him to sell it. Yeah. So in such a case, we will write. The person can say, "Okay, I'm willing to make the sale." And before he makes the sale, he goes to 2 witnesses and he says, I'm making the sale because I'm coerced to being forced into this. Okay, let's leave it over here.